as you know, as an entrepreneur, every day is a challenge, right? There, you have new problems to solve every day. And so what works today is likely not going to work in 6 to 12 months from now. And so I think having a mindset where you are ready to adapt and change is really critical to being successful. You can't ever get too complacent and think that just because this worked for me last season, it's going to work for me again. And so if you go into it open minded and you know that you have to kind of pivot and change and shift strategies throughout, I think you're more prepared to question, why is something working and will it continue to work?
Kerry Michaels, welcome to 20 Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Michael, thank you so much for having me. This is a pleasure.
I really appreciate you joining me from Austin. You're the co-founder and CEO of William Mary Golf, and I have a feeling that we're going to be, we're in for quite a treat of an entrepreneurial story. Something about the energy already tells me this, and so without further ado, I'd love to get started right over there. Take me to the First of all, a little bit about yourself. What your connection to golf is. How did you even enter this whole space? And then I want to hear about the founding of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So to really start, I grew up always wanting to be an entrepreneur. My dad's an entrepreneur, so I always very much looked up to him. So I always felt like it was kind of in my blood. But, after college, I didn't know what I wanted to do or what that idea was yet. So my first job out of school was in marketing research consulting. And then from there, quick overview, I went back to business school and I was like, I really want a broader background in business, across a lot of different areas. And so I went back and I kind of studied a lot of different things. I didn't have a specific focus. And after grad school, again, I kind of jumped around. And I remember at one point being like, oh, my resume looks like, I'm all over the place. I've been in marketing and finance, strategy, operations. I really I love business. And so I always wanted to kind of get my hands in different parts of it. And I think that's really what helped prepare me and to feel confident going into this startup journey, was having that broad base and that broad background where I had touched so many different things throughout my career. So that was kind of the start of it. But I always have thought like an entrepreneur. And so I was working here in Austin, Texas for another company called The Chive. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a humor media company, but they also had an e-commerce division, and they were selling funny T-shirts, and it was a very, very big business, and they had a huge following. And some of the T-shirts they were doing actually had Bill's face on the front of them, and that was a huge business for them. So when I came in as head of operations, I was just blown away by this community of people. And I had come from Oakley. I loved that sport performance world. I did really enjoy golf. And so I had seen one of the T-shirts they sold at the Chive has our now William Murray Golf logo on it. And it's a picture of Bill tossing his golf club. And they did this T-shirt for charity. I think they sold, I don't know, 2,000 units in 24 hours or something crazy. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's a great shirt. But it seems like it could be something bigger. It seems like, with that kind of logo and people really ate it up. I felt like there was a brand there. So, in chatting with the founders at the Chive, I said, gosh, wouldn't this be fun, to start a brand, to start a golf apparel line with Bill? And, had mixed reviews internally. They were like, yeah, it would be really cool, but everyone says Bill's never going to say yes to an idea like this again. We have his license on t-shirts. We should just be okay with that and move on. So, the entrepreneurial side of me was like, okay, that's fine, but do you mind if I still work on the business idea and the concept? Because I think there's a huge opportunity and I just want to explore it a little further. So they said, yeah, go for it. Um, and really, the white space that I saw was that nobody in golf was doing anything fun. I mean, there was nothing disruptive about it. You kind of squinted your eyes, and all the big players looked exactly the same. You couldn't differentiate one from the other. Um, and I called it the sea of blue striped polos. Everyone everyone was the same. So I was like, well, why does it have to be like that? Why do guys have to wear a uniform on the course? That doesn't seem fun.
By the way, why? How did we get to this point? Why is this sort of the tradition? Just something very old, old school tradition.
Right. Exactly. Why? So that was where it stemmed from. And then I was like, well, the Chive has this, great community of people that love Bill Murray. So he clearly has a ton of personality and people love his movies. What if he was the face of this movement in golf? Where it was to break away from the norm and to do something a little different. So that was the original idea. I'll say it took us, I incubated this company under the Chive with my co-founder, Brandon Barrett, who was also at the Chive and very involved in golf. And so he and I incubated it there for a few months, and then we split off and became our own company in 2017.
Wow. Okay, so you became your own company in 2017. Take me to the sort of that moment where you're sort of sitting there with your co-founder and you're thinking about, how this is going to unfold. What is the strategy that you have in terms of creating, a brand for this? You're going to break some trends and you're going to create some new trends of your own. What is the vision that you're setting out in the strategy that you're laying out for this?
So there were a couple things. I think the first thing was that, we didn't want to create this loud golf brand with crazy prints just because, right? I wanted everything that we did to be rooted in something that was meaningful and had purpose and told a story. I think people really connect to brands that do a great job at telling stories. So that was a key first part of it for me. And so every design to this day that we do tells a story about either Bill and his family's love for golf, some of their stories from growing up, and then also, stories about, Bill's movies. And so every print, there's something, meaningful there. I think the second part of our strategy really was how we went to market. I had a background in e-com and direct to consumer. And when I was at Oakley, actually, I kind of saw the flip side. I saw what the wholesale model looked like, and I worked with reps around the world very closely, and I saw how difficult that process was. And so when we started William Murray Golf, we said, listen, let's be primarily focused on direct to consumer because we have an icon and a brand, with Bill Murray as the face of this, we can get a lot of brand awareness, but let's go direct to the consumer on this and streamline the business, because when you have to start hiring reps and going into green grass retail and trying to scale that way, that is how 99% of the golf brands out there have built their brands. But it's a difficult path and it can take a long time to grow. And so we wanted to grow just a little bit faster. And direct to consumer really we felt was the answer.
Wow. Okay. And how did that work? So you're going direct to consumer. Obviously, this is it a competitive market? Is it a saturated? I mean, how do you even do direct to consumer for golf apparel? I mean, what did you learn, or sort of what were the assumptions behind the golf audience that they are? How do you even get them?
Yeah. So, golf is one of the most popular sports in the world. I mean, it is a huge market when you look at the opportunity. And so for us, it's worked really well. I think having Bill as the face has allowed us to get a lot of press. And so from the get-go, we were getting a lot of press and stories about us. So we sold out of our first collection in the spring of 2016 was gone within that first week. So I remember it was that fall. By the time we got to the holidays, we had nothing to sell. We didn't even, I think in 2016, we sent out one email, and that was the launch email, and I think that was it. So, that was an interesting way to start the company. I think since then, we operate much more like a typical e-com business in our marketing strategies and acquiring new customers and whatnot, but we definitely had a nice head start.
So with Bill, and I can only imagine the fun it is to have his to have his own personality be a part of this. I'm just looking here on, I'm looking at his smiley face with a pink and blue, flower shirt, and immediately thinking Groundhog Day, when how sustainable how does that sustain? Or I'll ask it in a different way. How do you as an entrepreneur realize sort of when it's time to grow, and when you outgrow certain processes? You mentioned that this may be a good head start for a company, but then you mentioned that today you're operating much more as a traditional e-commerce business. So how do you know, as an entrepreneur, to make that leap?
Yeah, as you know, as an entrepreneur, every day is a challenge, right? You have new problems to solve every day. And so what works today is likely not going to work in 6 to 12 months from now. And so I think having a mindset where you are ready to adapt and change is really critical to being successful. You can't ever get too complacent and think that just because this worked for me last season, it's going to work for me again. And so if you go into it open-minded and you know that you have to kind of pivot and change and shift strategies throughout, I think you're more prepared to question, why is something working and will it continue to work? I think having key metrics and things, benchmarks to kind of show, was this a successful campaign? Well, I don't know. What were we trying to accomplish with it? What did we think it was going to do? And so making sure that you're challenging yourself and challenging those assumptions is really important along the way.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, the fundraising for this. You did raise, money for this, and what is so the thoughts behind that, and this is sort of bridging the gap between sort of my own experience from VC-backed companies to more businesses or more traditional businesses. So I'm curious to hear about the strategy with the funding here.
Yeah, so when my co-founder Brandon and I split off from the Chive in early 2017, we had to kind of hit the ground running and start raising our own capital. When you're in the apparel business, it is very capital intensive to buy that inventory. And when we were growing fast, we wanted to buy, more and more inventory, 9 months in advance of it coming. And so it's an expensive business. We were very fortunate because the founder of the Chive, John Resig, also had a podcast at the time when we started this. And so he had a great network of people that he was able to introduce us to when we started fundraising. And so from there, I kind of call it's like a network effect. It's like a spider web. One person leads you to another. And, I think the advice I always give people is never be afraid, even if it is a no. If someone's telling you, no, sorry, this isn't the right investment, never be afraid to ask them if there's anyone in their network they might know that could be a good fit for what you're doing and might be interested. Because what I have found is that about 9 times out of 10, somebody will say, you know what? Yeah, actually, I have a good friend who loves golf and this person might be a good fit. So we did attempt to go down the VC route early on. And I think fortunately for us, it didn't work out. I don't think we weren't the right type of business for what they were looking for. Um, and in retrospect, I get that now. Um, VC is not for everybody, nor and it shouldn't be. And so we have about 70 investors, all angel, all angel investors, and that's also has its own challenges. But every it seems like every year we've kind of raised little bits and pieces along the way.
That's really really cool. Tell me a little bit about your own experience. You've given me bits and bytes throughout the last 15 minutes, but what has this been like for you as the entrepreneur? You said something before about the daily challenges and the daily struggle, but you said it in a way that it seemed like you really enjoy it.
I, I love being an entrepreneur. I think there's so many things about this journey that are exciting. It is not for the faint of heart, right? Every day is has its own challenges, and I'm learning stuff about myself all along the way. But to be able to create a vision from scratch and to figure out, all the things that go into it and to shape it and mold it every day. I mean, that is cool. And I get so excited when I see someone wearing William Murray Golf in the wild, is what I call it. Like, I don't know what it is. I just get so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a customer. I see them. And, I love going up to them and just saying, hey, I love your shirt. And they have no idea who I am. And their faces always light up and they get really excited. And so for me, that, produces so much. I'm so proud and so excited for the brand and for the team. So there's a lot of things I love about, being an entrepreneur. But, we're learning and growing every day.
If you had to, if I'm looking at this journey that you're on, and you had to sort of do some reflection on what was most successful for you, in dealing with the challenges and dealing with the daily struggle while being so activated and being so on it when you are obviously raising from 70 angels. What advice do you have sort of for yourself, or as some sort of reflection? Raising from 70 angels requires quite a bit of commitment. It's not easier than raising from a top tier VC fund. It requires a lot of trust building, and a lot of community.
Yeah, it really does. I do feel grateful because I think we have an amazing group of investors. It's really important. I tell people this all the time. It's so important to keep your investors up to date on not just the good, but the bad and the ugly too, because that's the reality of running a business. It's not all easy. And so I think building that trust with investors where they know that when I tell them we're going through a tough time, that it really must be a tough time. And they listen and they pay attention. And so I think that's part of building that community, is building the trust that they can rely on the information that you're sharing with them. And I think that's key to being successful in the future too.
Yeah, and so, a few words on building trust with your customers as they approach your brand beyond the very friendly face. What did you learn about being successful there?
Well, what's fascinating is that when customers reach out to us, they think Bill Murray is on the other side. They expect and think that Bill's going to be answering their emails. And so I remember figuring this out just a couple weeks into selling. And my founder, Brandon, and I, we were like, gosh, the customer has always got to be at the center of what we do. And I want to talk to them all. I want to answer every email as fast as possible. I mean, Brandon and I were customer service for the first few years. And so I think that's really important. And honestly, I still talk to customers. I still want to hear what they have to say. And that is something that is never lost on me. Our team does a really great job of making sure that, our I think our average response time with customers is like, 10 to 12 hours. And so, you're going to hear from us and you're going to hear from a real person. And I think people appreciate that. And, there are going to be challenges and there are things, a package is late or you ship the wrong, item or whatnot. In my mind, those are opportunities to build a relationship with that customer and acknowledge, that there was a problem. And you say, yeah, gosh, sorry, that sucks. What can we do to make this right? And I think so often people are scared to say that they messed up. And to build the relationship and trust with your consumer, you have to acknowledge when and where you went wrong.
Well, I love that. Kelly, thank you so much. Kerry, Kerry, thank
Okay, it
you.
happens all the time.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure. I'm sure that it does. By the way, it's but both of them are beautiful names. But Kerry, I really appreciate your time, and I just love I love the energy that I mentioned this at the beginning of the conversation. The energy that you brought to the conversation, and from the founding story as well, starting with entrepreneurship, transitioning to entrepreneurship, building this trust with the community around you, which is not trivial at all, and following up with customer obsession and creating really meaningful trust in what you're building. I think that's just really awesome. So thank you very much for bringing me into this journey over these 20 short but very insightful minutes. I really appreciate it. And I wish you best of luck with everything that you're doing and with everything that you'll continue doing. And I look forward to being cheering from the side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and best of luck to you as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.